Since I was a child growing up in North America, I was always obsessed with something. And my something was the future. I was always trying to ask myself the question, will I ever be able to look through the future? And it became an obsessive question in many ways. I remember looking at everything around me and always trying to ask that question, what will the future look like? And when you're a child, the future means many different things. Will your parents fight tomorrow? That might be a future question. Will my grandmother cook me that horrible cookies? And that was another future question that I was always afraid of. And the answer is, well, she was always cooking those horrible cookies. So question after question, as I was growing, I realized that even if the question was changing in size and in magnitude, it never really left me alone. In many ways, the question I'm going to ask today, why not design our future today, is the same question that has been haunting me for so many years. So as I was growing up, and I was happy that some bad memory were behind me, my grandmother's cookies, I was starting to figure out the question in a more structured way. So I always try to ask the question, can we really look through the future, and what would the answer look like? So today, the answer I'm going to provide you with, to start with, is maybe we can. Now, historically, as I was progressing in my career, Marta presented me, I'm an academic, so I have a limited understanding of the world because I'm sometimes very busy with just questions. I was always trying to evolve the question as I was growing up. And so, little by little, I was working towards the same principle. But I was getting disappointed. I was asking myself the question, can I look at the past and see whether the future will equate that? And little by little, as I was getting into professional assignment, I realized that the past never equals the future. So I was puzzled and very confused. I still am puzzled and confused. My confusion now is much different from before. It's creative. It's a confusion that maybe you're going to have at the end of this talk, as you're trying to ask yourself the question, what the future looks like, and can we design it somehow? So little by little, I started to understand that I could not look at the past to figure out what the future looks like. So I had to look at something else. But where to look? The present was my answer. I started to look at today. I was trying to understand whether if I look at today, I can have a sense of what tomorrow will look like. And I was really bedazzled by the concept of trajectories. First of all, I like how they look like. This idea is that something is really growing in a linear, progressive way towards the future. And then I asked myself the question, in such a fast-moving environment, in such a fast-moving world, can we look at trajectory and learn anything from this? So the easy answer is not really, because we got so many changes going on right now. But there are some safe assumptions that maybe can lead us to some sort of safe trajectory that we can take. So today, I'm going to talk to you about mega trends. We discovered with the group of people I work with, remember, it's never just myself doing anything, it's a group of people around you that make it possible. In my case, being an academic, it's the students who work with me, the colleagues, the researchers that allow me to go a little bit further sometimes. So it's a collaborative research action. It's really the power of the minds for many of those questions to be posited and then investigated. We discover over time that there are 5 undercurrents that always somehow have a meaning for tomorrow. These are 5 mega trends that always happen. Because unless something radical really transforms our society or our humanity, these 5 mega trends will continue to progress in the future. So we started to say, maybe we should focus on what we can really control. And we went into this hypothetical acronym. It was a breakfast morning in Singapore in August 2015. I was with my best buddy, Karen C., an Hong Kong-born Canadian that was sharing with me breakfast. He basically paid for it. And we were trying to figure out whether we had something to put together that was encapsulating the research for so many years. And the answer is drive. We started to think, what are these constants, these mega trends, this undercurrent that always happen and that we can study over time? Because if we can crack them now, we can possibly see what they look like tomorrow and intervene, change them, eventually become part of that architecture that I'm trying to represent today. So DRIVE stands as an acronym of 5 different elements. It's an action verb, and this is great because it makes us feel we're going forward. I'm always asking myself the question, imagine if we call it reverse, where would I go with this research? So we talked about DRIVE as these 5 megatrends, demographics, where people are, the movement that are really changing our society, resources, what we need as society to grow and prosper and foster our dreams and ambition. And now we're really defining the relationship between D and R. Inequality, Rolf earlier really talked about this income inequality, but we discovered there are many more inequality that we're currently dealing with, almost like this transactional cost that are happening between generation, between system, between country, between region. And then we decided to look at the things that we can understand, like velocity, volatility, scale, complexity. And we used a little bit of our understanding about finance and numbers and mathematics to determine that maybe some of the models that define and rule and reign who we are today are no longer applicable. And then, because we were in Asia, the cradle of this new wave, we can call it a second wave or third wave, depending on how you like to see the world, we realized that there were a lot of practices emerging from the emerging world that were changing the course of everything. We were used to the innovation coming from the Silicon Valley, and we thought this is cool, but that's the 20th century. In the 21st century, what we see more and more, innovation coming from the south of the world, the same south of the world that was not really part of our story a few years ago. So the acronym Drive is a story of today. It's a story in which we're trying to look at these 5 mega trends and how they really bring us to a potential orchestration of trends, to the point in which maybe we can use them for some purpose. We are changing dramatically our society. We're changing to a point in which we're becoming an entirely different society. When I went to school years ago, my professor was telling me about the population pyramid, and I was so intrigued to figure out what it was. The population pyramid represents how we are as society. Children at the bottom of the pyramid, and as we're actually skewing this up, they're becoming smaller and smaller. That's why we think about, as you age, you're kind of losing that part of the segmentation in population. But in our last 35 years, coincidentally to also what we saw the beginning of this new phase, 1980, 1985, 1990, population really starts to accelerate this trend towards one major constant, aging. We're older now than what we ever been before. Aging has become something that we were not really experiencing. You have Japan that is looking at aging as an average of 52 years as a median by 2030. And you have Mali that will go from 16 to 16.9 years of age as a median. While there are tremendous and actually really astounding differences between Japan and Mali, what they have in common is in their own proportionality, they are aging. So why are we aging? A number of factors is quality of life. Now we can have clean water that will boost our life expectancy of many years. We have access to basic medical care. That's another booster that allows us to really live longer. If you match water with primary care, life expectancy grows by 20 years and population multiplies. So we have now reached a different threshold of what we define society all about. We're no longer poor and sick. We are in many ways converging towards a healthier society, much more participatory on what really life is all about. But unfortunately, we're not doing just because we are aging. We're also moving into different constituency. We are going into city more and more. We are urbanizing at a pace we have never seen before. Urbanization is really touching a lot on our life. We're going from having, in the rich world, about 85% urbanized cities into the emerging world that rate from 30% of India, still a lot of progress ahead of the Indian market, to urbanize to 40 to 50%. Or think about China. From what we know, the coastal part of China, the Pearl River Delta, that really initiated the development of the country, all the way down to what Chinese call second-tier city, and now third-tier city. Eventually tomorrow we'll see fourth-tier city, and why not fifth? So what I'm trying to say is that demographic and urbanization are changing radically the way we are. But this is not coming by itself. When you are having more and more people that are somehow aging, and they are occupying more space in convergence, in proximity, resources is becoming the issue. So when we talk about the R, we're talking about what is the scarcity ahead of us that we could really imagine being forthcoming. And as you can imagine, development is a phenomenal machine for us to really think about packaging ambition and aspiration in a different place. But it comes to a transaction, and that transaction most of the time is resources. We'll need more water. With water, you'll have access to more food. Food is needed in agriculture for the cattle to basically be able to grow, because we use them for human consumption. As society are growing and becoming more mature, moving past the infancy of development, they will consume more meat. We saw from the abridged TED Talk that becoming a vegetarian would be a great way forward, but we're very far from reaching that ideal. Why? Because somehow consumption of meat is a sign, almost as a sign of an ideological movement towards development that many countries want to experience from scarcity and not having to have it. So with water and with the restraining of resources, we have the issue with food. And food scarcity is another one of the issue we're currently having. We are really looking at a degree of scarcity that will be really threatening unless we're able to really address this. So that's another mega trend we're going to look at. With demographic really moving up and changing the fabric, the texture, the chemistry of the human population on the planet, we also see how resources are radically changing. And when the two things happen, somehow we are accidentally, let's go back to what we heard early part of the TED Talk, maybe an accidental, non-conspiracy-driven model, inequality are rising. We're more unequal today than ever been before. Not only in terms of income, but think about mobility. The American dream, they really saw a lot of us working hard, going through education, and then aspiring or entering into a different level of life. It's not granted to everybody. The number of people with degrees, they're not really working accordingly to their skills, is increasing. And that's a crisis, an epidemic that we need to address. But at the same time, think about the mobility and how we have people that are maybe living in a landlocked country that will never be able to really experience the benefit of society which are open. Or Internet of Things. I was talking to one of my former colleagues at Harvard, Flavio, and Flavio worked for Cisco, and he was telling me Cisco is driving the revolution of Internet of Everything, but the number of people still away from this grid is close to 60% of the world population. So we might have a world going at 2 speeds, maybe 3, and that's another degree of inequality we really have. So with inequality, we really have to figure out that DR and I are threatening our ability for our future generation to really have a life made of decency. That's when I tell you that we can look at the future in a structured and serious way, but looking at the present. This is our trajectory that will happen if we're not changing the course of the same. But at the same time, we have 2 allies in this story. One is the fact that our models are changing so rapidly that the story of the world is being written as we speak. We no longer have one universal operating system. The operating system is being done as we are in this TED Talk, for example. The ability for us to shape and change our society is in our hands. And lots of the models that really ruled the 20th century now are becoming obsolete. So what we're looking more and more is that speed, acceleration, the ability for systems to really propose themselves in nanoseconds is something we never had before. And the old economics model they're used to define what the norm is are becoming, in many ways, the past. We honor them, we embrace them as part of our legacy. We're happy to leave them where they are in the books of history. But with complexity, also we having the ability for certain events to happen without any warning. So will we be able to have society that are going to be able to transition to the next level without having what we call the illusion of control? The final part is really the magic happening from the emerging economy, the enterprising dynamics. The company you see behind me are companies emerging in countries like China. They used to be companies we used to blame because we were always thinking they're copying our technology. What's happening, maybe that's how they started. We had heard about, we never start from scratch. There's always an endowment. But now what we really see more and more is the company that you see in this TED Talk are changing the way everything is being done. We're talking about an innovation-driven entrepreneurship emerging from the emerging economy. Like we can talk about the frugal innovation in India that is teaching the world how to do great things with very little. The conversation of today is not to scare us that the future looks actually gloomy. It does look gloomy if we are sitting down and waiting for this to happen. But the reason why I am here today is to empower you to become architects of our future. We can't change the future because we now know that some of this trajectory will happen unless we decide to actively work in this direction. The question I ask you about can we control our future that has been haunting me since I was a child continues to haunt me. But you know what, guys? I feel less lonely now. I feel I have an instrument, a tool. It's called drive. It's a bit of what I consider the work of many different years with people that I have met in my life that is helping me to figure out that maybe the future is not so scary. Maybe I can be the future. Maybe you can be the future. Maybe we can create together the future that we deserve. I wish you all the best. Thank you.